The intriguing concept of a philosophical zombie, often referred to as AAEUP zombie, is the cornerstone of a philosophical thought experiment related to the philosophy of the mind. These hypothetical beings are physically human, like but devoid of consciousness. Acting as if they have subjective experiences without actually having them in instance would be a P-zombie reacting in the same way as a conscious being to pain, but without actually feeling it. This conjecture aligns with the ongoing debate against physicalism and in favor of the hard problem of consciousness, which seeks to explain conscious experiences in physical terms. Advocates of this argument, including the renowned philosopher David Chalmers, argue the mere hypothetical possibility of a P-zombie disproves physicalism. They base this on the premise that a P-zombie is physically indistinguishable from a conscious being, thus highlighting consciousness as an additional factor. Contrarily, philosopher Daniel Stoljar counters that a minuscule psychological variance, such as the taste of coffee, in two physically identical beings disproves physicalism. Various philosophers, including Daniel Dennett and Christopher Hill, controversially argue that P-zombies are either logically implausible or metaphysically impossible. The term zombie was first coined by philosopher Robert Kirk in 1974. In this context, though David Chalmers is most associated with it. Moreover, Keith Campbell proposed a similar argument in his book Body and Mind using the term imitation man. The concept of philosophical zombies has sparked a vibrant debate amongst scholars. Critics argue about the feasibility of zombies and whether or not their feasibility necessarily implies possibility. Furthermore, critics question the logical validity of the argument. Survey results from professional philosophers by Bourget and Chalmers in 2013 and 2020 show varied opinions. 37 believe P-zombies are feasible but metaphysically impossible. 23 believe they're metaphysically possible. 16 deem them unthinkable. While 25, the zombie concept is about notion of a being, physically similar to a human, but devoid of conscious experience. Various subtypes of zombies are utilized in different intellectual experimentations, including the neurological zombies typically indistinguishable from a human from a physiological perspective, and the imperfect zombie exhibiting slightly different behaviors compared to an ordinary human, specifically valued in mind. Evolution studies. Also, a zombie universe is identical to ours in physical aspects, but entities there lacks qualia, subjective conscious experiences. Zombie arguments often bolster reasoning, aiming to establish the metaphysical possibility of zombies in order to contribute to dualism, a belief in the existence of two fundamental types of existence, the mental and the physical. Conversely, physicalism posits that material facts determine all other facts. The implication is that physicalism would have to accept that P-zombies either can't potentially exist or they are equivalent to normal humans. The zombie argument falls under broader modal arguments against physicalism, poised against theories like that of Saul Kripke. Such arguments gained prominence in the 1970s, forwarded by thinkers like Thomas Nagel and Robert Kirk. David Chalmers is particularly recognized for developing a comprehensive argument in his work. The conscious mind he proposes the possibility of a zombie world, physically unvarying from ours yet devoid of conscious experience, and he suggested this metaphysically possible. Chalmers' version argues that if physicalism is true, a metaphysically possible world with the same physical facts as ours would include everything that exists in our world, particularly conscious experience. He argues the conceivable existence of a zombie world where consciousness is absent, which suggests the metaphysical possibility of such a world, thus deeming physicalism as false. This zombie argument has various other formulations with shared premises from all types of zombie arguments. This broader zombie argument is motivated by potential disagreements amongst anti-physicalist views, some of which may accept the impossibility of P-zombies, but acknowledge the possibility of inverted qualia or partial zombiehood replacement of premises regarding fed zombies by inverted qualia, or partial zombiehood can generate variations of the zombie argument. So how philosophical theory of physicalism is contested through the concept of zombies. A more refined explanation of the argument is to consider P to represent all physical truths of our existence, and Q to denote some conscious reality of our actual existence. The argument proposes that it's conceivable for P to exist without Q, and if this is feasible, then physicalism, which equates all aspects of existence to the physical world, is untrue. In this context, Q may be false in some possible circumstances, such as an inverse relationship with our actual world, or the absence of a conscious reality. The concept of philosophical zombies reinforces this argument. These zombies are theoretical beings that resemble humans in every physical aspect, but lack consciousness. Also, there is an explanatory gap, otherwise known as the hard problem of consciousness, which asserts the lack of credible causal explanation for our consciousness or the absence of it. I.e., why aren't we zombies? Amy Kind adds another perspective with her imitation money example. A counterfeit $20 bill may perfectly mimic the genuine bill physically, but it still doesn't possess the same value. This analogy further argues against physicalism by questioning if consciousness can be equated purely to physical existence. In her book, Philosophy of Mind, The Basics, Kind explains from a dualist perspective that zombies, beings physically identical but devoid of consciousness, are conceivable. If such creatures can be conceived, then they are possible, and thus consciousness must be separate from the physical. However, this theory is disputed by philosophers like Galen Strawson, who claim that zombies' conception cannot be established conclusively. Despite this, many philosophers, including Chalmers, argue that the possibility of zombies carries no contradiction and is thus conceivable. While many physicalist philosophers refute the existence of zombies as they fundamentally contradict the premise of physicalism, stating that a physically identical world must inevitably generate consciousness, renowned philosopher Chalmers advocates this view, suggesting the notion that anything logically possible is also, in the right context, metaphysically achievable. However, some philosophers, such as Daniel Dennett, challenge this view by questioning the coherence of such concepts as qualia and related unique mind phenomena. Dennett refutes the zombie proponents' assertion about consciousness and lived experiences. He insists that elements like the feeling of pain can't be detached from one's mental state without sparking significant behavioral and physiological changes. According to Dennett, consciousness isn't a simple entity, but a network of aspects and ideas. He strongly opposes the idea of philosophical zombies, B-zombies, arguing that their existence is logic-defying. He posits that when imagining P-zombies, philosophers underestimate the complexity of conception and unintentionally contravene their definition. To further articulate his stance, Dennett conceptualizes Zimbos, P-zombies capable of forming second-order beliefs, and uses them to illustrate the nonsensical nature of P-zombies. He argues Zimbos erroneously believe they possess consciousness, qualia, and the ability to experience pain, none of which they can substantiate nor disprove according to traditional philosophical beliefs. Philosopher Michael Lynch supports Dennett's argument, suggesting that the P-zombie argument compels us to confront the dichotomy between questioning our consciousness or denying the existence of zombies. If P-zombies can be deceived into believing they are conscious, how can we, humans, guarantee that we aren't in the same predicament? The debate also brings to light the concept of reductive physicalism, wherein the idea of self is linked solely to a tangible physical reality. This viewpoint negates the existence of philosophical zombies by default. Metzinger dismisses the zombie argument altogether. He calls it an inadequate discourse dependent on the challenging task of defining consciousness. Verificationism's theory also adds to the desirability of qualia, wherein the impossibility of P-zombies is emphasized since, for points or matters to carry meaning, they should be verifiable publicly. Gualtiero Piccinini argues that the idea of zombies being conceivable in our world is an example of circular logic, as any potential worlds with zombies have to be accessible from our world. Assuming that physicalism, the belief that all things can be reduced to physical properties, is true in our world, it becomes part of the baseline for determining if a zombie world is within reach. Thus, the question of whether zombies could exist is equivalent to asking if physicalism is true. Stephen Yablo, 1998, offers a theory to account for why we might think that zombies could exist. He states that the idea of the physical and what can theoretically happen physically evolves over time. So conceptual clarity is not something we can rely upon. Yablo claims to be prepared for the notion of zombies becoming inconceivable, but admits that he's uncertain what form that clarity will take. The zombie argument illuminates strong differences of opinion about the role and reach of philosophy and the inherent nature and limitations of conceptual analysis. Some philosophers like Dennett, Churchland, and Quine hold fundamentally different views, leading to ongoing and intense debate about the zombie argument. Some philosophers are open to hypothetical reasoning, but make exceptions for the zombie concept. As per Hill and McLaughlin, the zombie thought process involves both empathetic imagination, imagining oneself in a phenomenal state, and a perceptual imagination. In a perceptual imagination, imagining becoming aware of an external phenomenon, they argue that the two forms of imagination could negate each other when used simultaneously, and suggest this may be why Chalmers's argument does not hold up. The knowledge argument of Frank Jackson poses the scenario of a hypothetical scientist, Mary, who, despite possessing a detailed knowledge about the neurobiology of vision, has never experienced color as she exists in a black and white world. Jackson initially suggested this supported epiphenomenalism, the idea that mental phenomena are consequences but not causes of physical phenomena, but later revised his stance towards physicalism, suggesting that Mary merely discovers a new way for her brain to represent senses. Searle believes that no matter how technologically advanced a program might be, it simply cannot grant a computer the capability to understand or possess a mind. The critique of Searle is interpreted by Stephen Harnad not as one against computers, but rather in opposition to functionalism and computationalism. He believes that Searle's arguments aim to advocate neuroscience as the definitive approach to understanding the mind. In contrast, physicist Adam Brown proposes a unique way of contemplating the concept of consciousness through the construction of a philosophical zombie. This thought experiment would involve counterfactual quantum computation, in which a computer oscillates between running and not. If the said computer runs a brain simulation and the premise is accepted that such simulations can be conscious, then this could potentially allow the simulation to produce the same output as a conscious entity, yet without possessing consciousness itself.